2 planes, 1 city, 1 week that could redraw the map of the entire world. Air Force One lands in Beijing. Trump meets Xi behind closed doors for 2.5 hours. No press, no transcript, no leaks. 72 hours later, Putin's plane touches down at the same airport. As Air Force One cuts through the skies over Beijing, carrying American President Donald Trump, another aircraft is already on final approach to the same city, the Ilyushin, the personal jet of Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is not merely the choreography of 2 powerful leaders arriving and departing. This is history being written in real time. The center of global power is shifting, away from Washington, away from the familiar order of the post-Cold War era, and converging on Beijing's Great Hall of the People. Until recently, the United States and China were locked in a rivalry that defined the 21st century. Yet the scale of the grand deal struck between Trump and Xi Jinping, barely digested, still reverberating across chancelleries worldwide, is now being followed, within 72 hours, by Putin's arrival. That sequencing is not coincidental. It is deliberate architecture. The Kremlin has officially confirmed. President Vladimir Putin will arrive in Beijing on May 18th. Trump departs on May 15th. Within 72 hours, Moscow's most powerful figure follows Washington's most powerful figure into the same city to meet the same host. Beijing is no longer simply a mediator between Washington and Moscow. It has become something more consequential, a power broker, the axis around which the world's 3 most consequential nations are now orbiting. For years, analysts in Washington speculated that Trump's strategy involved peeling Russia away from China, driving a wedge between Beijing and Moscow to prevent the emergence of a Eurasian bloc capable of challenging American supremacy. That calculation now appears to have been inverted. Rather than separating Russia from China, the dynamic unfolding in Beijing suggests all 3 powers are converging, not in formal alliance, but in something arguably more dangerous. A shared interest in reordering the world. The question that haunts every intelligence agency from Langley to Whitehall is this. In that closed-door session between Trump and Xi, reported to have run twice as long as scheduled, was a seat quietly reserved for Putin? When a summit runs significantly over its allotted time, it signals that something consequential is being decided. The Trump-Xi meeting did exactly that. Diplomatic sources suggest it was not merely a trade negotiation. What was being drafted inside that room was a framework, a blueprint for ending Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II. According to sources within diplomatic circles, the proposed framework operates as follows. The United States would accept Russia's de facto control over the Ukrainian territories it currently occupies. In exchange, China would exert pressure on Moscow to refrain from further westward expansion, effectively guaranteeing the security of the remainder of Europe. Putin's arrival in Beijing on May 18th may represent the moment he receives and signs that framework. This arrangement would serve each party's core interests. Trump eliminates a costly, open-ended commitment that has drained American resources and political capital. Putin secures territorial gains and, critically, their international legitimization. Xi positions China as the indispensable architect of global stability, surpassing the United Nations, NATO, and every other multilateral institution in effective influence. For Ukraine, the calculus is brutal. Its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, its future, decided not in Kyiv, but on a negotiating table in Beijing. If this framework advances to implementation, it would constitute the most significant restructuring of the global order since 1945. Washington would be signaling unmistakably that it is prepared to abandon its post-war commitments to European security in exchange for a new triangular arrangement with its former adversaries. The Ukraine question was not the only item on the table inside that closed room. Alongside the map of Eastern Europe, the fate of the Middle East was also being redrawn. According to information circulating in diplomatic channels, the Trump administration placed before Beijing a proposal of remarkable scope. Iran would be permanently prevented from acquiring nuclear weapons. In return, The Islamic Republic would receive something it has sought for decades: a guarantee against external military intervention or forced regime change. For the first time, Washington appears prepared to abandon its long-standing policy of regime change in Tehran. But the most sensitive dimension of this proposal concerns Iran's network of regional proxies. Washington wants Iran to progressively reduce its operational control over the Houthi movement in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and its armed infrastructure inside Syria. In return, Tehran would receive partial sanctions relief and assurances of regional stability. There is a critical complication, however. China alone cannot deliver Iranian compliance. Tehran's modern defense architecture, its drone networks, missile technology, and nuclear security arrangements remains deeply enmeshed with Russian strategic support. Moscow's fingerprints are all over Iran's military modernization, which is precisely why Putin's presence in Beijing on May 18th may be decisive. Analysts now suggest that without Putin's endorsement, his green light Iran will not demonstrate the flexibility necessary to reach any meaningful agreement. Beijing may be the venue, but the deal requires all three powers at the table. The Taiwan silence. There was one moment in the Beijing summit that generated more concern than any public statement, and it was defined not by what was said, but by what was not. When President Xi Jinping raised the Taiwan question in direct, unambiguous terms, warning that any mishandling of the issue or external interference could lead to direct confrontation between the world's two most powerful nations, rendering any other agreement meaningless. Donald Trump, known for his combative instincts and rhetorical aggression, said nothing. He did not push back. He did not reassert America's commitment to Taiwan's security. He fell silent. That silence has set off alarm bells in Taipei, Tokyo, and every NATO capital. What does Trump's silence mean? The absence of Taiwan's name from subsequent White House statements only deepened the concern. Analysts are now advancing a sobering hypothesis that the United States may have offered China a quiet, informal understanding, a silent concession in which Washington gradually reduces its military support for Taiwan in exchange for massive Chinese economic commitments that help stabilize the American economy. For Xi Jinping, reunification with Taiwan is not merely a policy objective. It is a matter of historical legitimacy, the defining mission of his political legacy. For Trump, American economic revival and market strength are the supreme priorities. When the strategic interests of two such leaders intersect at a single point, smaller democracies, Taiwan, Ukraine, others risk becoming bargaining chips in transactions they have no voice in shaping. The Thucydides Trap. During the summit at the Great Hall of the People, President Xi raised a concept that immediately electrified diplomatic circles worldwide: the Thucydides Trap. He asked, pointedly, whether China and the United States could escape it. What is the Thucydides Trap? It is one of the most sobering frameworks in the study of international relations. Its name derives from Thucydides, the ancient Greek historian and military strategist who, in the 5th century BCE, documented the Peloponnesian War with extraordinary analytical precision. In his landmark work, The History of the Peloponnesian War, Thucydides identified the root cause of that catastrophic conflict. Athens was rising rapidly, and its growing power generated existential fear in Sparta, the established hegemon. That fear, structural, not rational, made war nearly inevitable. In our era, Harvard professor Graham Allison revived this concept and applied it to the most consequential rivalry of the 21st century, the United States and China. His research is sobering. Over the past 5 centuries, in 16 cases where a rising power challenged an established one, 12 ended in war. The structural logic is relentless. As the rising power grows, economically, militarily, technologically, the established power perceives an existential threat to its dominance. Both sides begin to misread each other's intentions. Minor diplomatic miscalculations escalate. Third parties ignite crises neither side wanted, and history's wheel turns toward catastrophe. The United States has been the world's unchallenged hegemon for 8 decades. China has risen with unprecedented speed across 4. The conditions for the Thucydides Trap are not theoretical. They are present. When President Xi invoked this concept in front of Donald Trump, he was delivering a message of carefully calibrated weight. China does not want war. China's rise will continue. And China is asking the United States to choose cooperation over confrontation before the structural logic of great power rivalry makes that choice impossible. What is unfolding in Beijing is not a series of bilateral meetings. It is the architecture of a new world order constructed not by international law, not by multilateral consensus, but by three men in closed rooms, trading the futures of smaller nations for their own strategic interests. Whether this triangular arrangement produces stability or accelerates toward catastrophe depends on whether its architects can resist the gravitational pull of the Thucydides Trap, the ancient, remorseless logic that has consumed rising and established powers alike, again and again, across 25 centuries of recorded history. Putin arrives in Beijing on May 18th. The envelope Trump left behind is waiting, and the world watches. This has been a World Power Analysis. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video, and subscribe the channel.